Hey students, welcome to this week's topic, which is family engagement. So we will continue our kind of a tour of early childhood education topics, and we want to talk about an important topic this week, which is all about families. So let's get going on this one. Before we jump into talking about families, I just wanted to talk about a few things here. First of all, each of us are unique. Each student is unique. We are all unique and have different characteristics, different backgrounds, different experiences. Each of our families is also unique. So the places where we come from, also unique and individual. Families have things in common as well as differences. This is something that we would find when we look at families, that they're going to have some things that are kind of the same as each other and some things that are very different. The following content that we're going to look at in this presentation may seem kind of foreign to you if your family experiences have been different than those described. I want to share briefly about my life experiences. So I essentially have grown up in a single parent family. Um, my father died when I was only 3 years old. So I really don't remember anything about my father, but I do know that my mother had the job, a very difficult job, of raising four boys. So I was boy number four, and she raised all of us and did a good job of that. So kind of where I'm coming from, I was from a single parent family essentially, and I think my early life experiences really have resulted in what I did with my life, what I chose to do with my life. So, not having a father, I have had the experience of working with a lot of young children and not really being a father to them, but really being a male role model in their life who can model learning for them, model nurturing for them, model caring, model having fun, things like that. So, because of my early experience of losing my father very early, it has really impacted the life that I have led and the work that I have chosen. So, just want to share that with all of you. Going to start off here with a quote that says, when families are stakeholders in students' education, there's a positive impact on student success. When families get involved and engaged in their child's education, students are more likely to graduate, earn higher grades, improve their attendance, and go to college. And this is from a website called Rethink Together, and it really summarized a lot of research that has been done on students and families and kind of how families help students to be successful. And of course, it's not going to happen in all circumstances, but this is what the research has shown us. Next, in our in-class presentation of this, we were going to do a student sharing. I was going to ask students to think about ways in which families, either their family or other families they have observed, have been involved in student learning in school. And I was going to ask the students to think about preschool, grade school, middle school, high school, and kind of talk about ways that families are involved and engaged in their students' schooling. So why is family engagement important in early childhood classrooms? Gonna look at a few reasons here. First of all, parents, guardians, family members come first. Teachers are to partner with and help parents in educating students, but home caregivers, home family members are the first people in children's lives, and this is the way it should be. Each child comes from a unique family background. It's important for teachers to get to know children and family members to best serve and educate children. So if you are a teacher someday, it's important for you to realize that not only do you have a unique family background, but each student that you encounter comes from a different family background, and it's helpful to get to know students and get to know them well. A child's earliest teachers help parents to understand the role that they play in the schooling process. When preschool teachers provide avenues for communication and genuinely listen to and partner with parents, then parents are more likely to stay engaged as their students get older. So I really viewed preschool as kind of a training ground for parents as well, where parents can learn to be engaged, to communicate, to attend conferences, to attend family events, that sort of thing. So that is one of the roles that preschool plays in children's lives. Next here, we're going to watch a short video. We're not going to watch it in this taped presentation of this, but this one really talks about how children spend some of their time in school and a lot of their time outside of school. So it's important for teachers to be aware of the outside of school so that we can connect best and serve students. Next, I'm going to provide maybe a half dozen family engagement quotes that I thought were helpful in learning about families and the role of families. First one, when families are involved in their children's learning, both at home and school, children do better in school. So this is kind of what the research has proven out. Second, when families get involved, children do better in school. This is from PTO Today, which stands for Parent Teacher Organization. At the end of the day, the most overwhelming key to a child's success is the positive involvement of parents. So school is important, but the positive involvement of parents is very important as well. The research is overwhelmingly clear. When parents play a positive role in their children's education, students do better in school. Next quote, education is a shared commitment between dedicated teachers, motivated students, and enthusiastic parents with high expectations. Parents are every child's first teacher, and that shouldn't change when a child enters kindergarten, fifth grade, ninth grade, or college. A parent is always going to be the child's first teacher. So the reason I wanted to share those quotes is because I think they all reflect a common theme of how important families are. That's why we're taking a week in our class to learn about families, because of the very valuable and important role that they play in the life of their students. Next, we're going to look at some family engagement approaches, things that schools and childcare centers can do to help families to be engaged in their child's life. So what are some ways to engage families? First of all, there's the enrollment and welcoming process. This is perhaps before a child even starts school or begins in a child care center. You've got an enrollment and a welcoming process. There are new family classroom and center visits. So when I was a director of the Early Childhood Center, new families would come in to check us out. I loved it when families had a lot of questions for us and were really looking to see if we were a good fit for their child. So you've got these new family visits, which is the first opportunity that you really have to get to know families and to begin the communication process. Another way that you can learn about children is to gather information about the family through a family information form. So at the Early Childhood Center, we had a form. It was a pretty long form, about 4 pages, that asked all about families because we really wanted to know what that family was like so that we could best serve the child that was going to be attending our center. Another way is by learning about families through home visits. So we're going to watch a video today of a home visit, which is just really the teacher going into the home with the express purpose of learning about that family and beginning to make those connections. Another way in which programs can share information to help families learn about the school is through a family handbook. So at the Early Childhood Center, we had a family handbook, and it talked about everything from our schedule to our approach to child guidance to nutrition to outdoor play to when to keep a child home if they're not feeling well. We shared a lot of information with families through that means. There are also creative ways that you can share information about your school. You can have videos on your website. You can do social media posts. You could do a lot of different things to help families learn about your school, to help them to learn to be engaged. Something we also did at the Early Childhood Center, and that many public schools do as well, is to have a new family open house and orientation. So we always did this. I think it was about the Friday before the semester was to begin, and all the new families would be welcome to come, and we would really encourage their attendance. They would come and they would get to meet the teachers. They would see where the child's cubby is. They would learn about some of our policies. They would learn just about how to get into the building, how to access through our secure entry system, how to sign their child in. We would show them kind of the process of dropping off, how they would take their child to wash hands, how they would bring them to the classroom, how we would talk with them. So a very good way to help families become engaged initially is through that open house and orientation. That is a very important thing to do. Another thing that you can do is to use your program's website and social media. You can teach families a whole bunch through these avenues. Another way to engage families is through daily conversations and connections. Whenever families came into our child care center, it was important for us to greet the children and the family members each and every day. And our greeting was very personal. We made sure to use the names of the children, the names of the parents or the grandparents or the aunt or the uncle or whoever was dropping off that day. So having a warm greeting and welcoming that child and that family into our classroom. We also did morning check-ins to see how the child and the family are doing. So just asking basic questions and having an opportunity to learn about children. Sometimes a parent would say, "Oh, last night was a rough night. We were up twice during the night," or the child's been a little bit anxious because mom's going to be having a baby or things like that. So morning check-ins were a great time to find out just how that family and how that child was doing that day. Another thing that we like to do is have end of the day sharing when a family member would come and pick up the child to talk about what that child did, what they learned that day. So another way of having some conversations and connections with family members. Some programs also use a communication log or send notes home. So sometimes during pickup, it's a busy time because a lot of families are coming in together. But if you have kind of a log where you write down notes of what the child did that day, a parent can read that log and learn about that. Some centers also have teachers that sit during nap time and kind of write notes to families on what's going on with that child and what their day has been like. Another new way of doing this is to use a communication app to aid in sharing daily information with family members both near and far. So a communication app is simply an app that a teacher would have on a classroom iPad or on a phone where they could go into this app and they could share pictures of the child playing with blocks that day. Or they could send a note about what the child ate for lunch that day. So there's a lot of good ways to make communication happen, and apps really help with that. So this in our in-person presentation, as well as in our Google Slides document that is shared, includes a link that you can follow to learn about communication apps. Here is another short video that we're going to watch in class to help us to learn how to connect with families by using communication apps. Some more ways to engage with families are by sharing relevant information with parents, so sharing info. Ways that we did this at the Early Childhood Center where I was from is we had family newsletters. There would be a letter from me, the director, to parents, and then each classroom teacher would also write a letter kind of summarizing the things that they did in the classroom that weekend, the things that they were learning, that sort of stuff. So monthly family newsletters are an important means of communication. Also, a family information board. So we had a family information board in our classroom, right where parents signed their children in. This is also where we posted our menus. We had a sheet up there sharing when we did fire drills, that sort of thing. So that's another good means of communication with families, the family information board. One thing that we also had on our family information board is we had a monitor, and this monitor was connected to a computer in my office. So we had scrolling announcements where parents were able to see visual announcements of what was going on at our child care center. So engaging families in that way. We also have Family Lending Library. Our Family Lending Library had books that were relevant to parents, such as on child guidance and activities to do at home. We also had fact sheets. We had a lot of different things that parents could check out if they wanted to learn more about the center and about child development and child guidance and things like that at home. Yet more ways to engage families, parent-teacher conferences. So quality schools and childcare providers offer regular conferences for parents and guardians. It's best to offer these at least twice a year. And then you can also have informal conferences when they are wanted by teachers or by parents and guardians. Conferences are an opportunity for teachers to share what a student is like in school and to learn about the student from the parent's perspective. So the teacher is sharing information with the parent as well as learning information from the parent. So parent-teacher conferences are a very important thing. Helpful things that I encourage teachers to share and that I shared when I was a teacher. I like to share a student's strengths and challenges. What are they really good at? What do they enjoy doing? As well as some of the challenges. What are some of the things that you're working on with the child? I also like to share how the student interacts with other students. How do they do at sharing and cooperating and being a teammate and things like that? I like to talk about how the student behaves and acts in class. How does the child do being part of a group and part of a group atmosphere? How the student does in child development screening and assessments. So we would do screenings and various assessments just to see if the child was progressing at a typical developmental rate of progression. So we would do those assessments and then share the results with parents at parent-teacher conferences. Another thing was that we would do to engage families is we would host family nights and events. And these are things that can happen at childcare centers as well as elementary schools. Family nights are a social night with a learning component involved. Family nights that we held at the Kish Early Childhood Center included topics such as an evening of art. This is a time when we had art activities set up throughout both of our classrooms, and parents and children engaged in the art together. The purpose of these was to be a fun time for families, as well as to help parents understand how process-oriented art is important and helpful for their children. So an evening of art was one of ours. An evening of literacy and books. We would do this one where we would read aloud to children. And by doing this, we would model to parents just how teachers would go about reading aloud to children. We would help parents learn about how to select good books, how to promote literacy development in their homes, etc. We also had a gym night. We were fortunate enough to be able to come over to the Kishwaukee College gym, and we had an obstacle course set up. We had mini basketball hoops. We had beanbag tosses. We had hula hoops. We had a soccer goal and soccer ball. We had all kinds of stuff. And the purpose of this one was not only for families to have fun, getting to know teachers, getting to know other families, but for us to focus on the importance of movement and exercise and nutrition in the lives of children. Every year we had a playground potluck. This was when spring hit and we wanted to get outside and enjoy our playground. So this was more of a social event where children would get to play and get to play with their parents and get to play with friends, and everybody would get to talk together about the school year and really enjoy this time together. Another one that we hosted was called A Day in the Life of the Kishwaukee College Early Childhood Center. So in this one, parents would get to see little portions of our day. They would get to see group time, they would get to see outdoor play, they would get to see art time, they would get to see just all the different things that we did during a typical day in the Early Childhood Center. One of the reasons why this was an important one for us to have is because there were some parents that, because they were not the one dropping off, they would never get to see our Early Childhood Center, never get to see what we do there, never really get to see what their child does. So a day in the life was a great way to show parents, grandparents, siblings, etc., just what we did at the Early Childhood Center. We also did one on group times. Much as we learned about group times in this class, we did one where we sang songs and did stories and did movement activities, used song props, that kind of thing, just so families could learn the importance of group times. So other ideas would be to feature a learning area in the classroom, such as blocks, manipulatives, dramatic play, writing, science, math, etc. So anything that you want to really spotlight and show families you could do at such a time as this. The activity that we are doing this week connects with family nights. Each of you as a student are going to be asked to create a family night kind of on paper, kind of to plan a family night, the topic, what you want families to learn, the activities that you're going to do, and then you're going to also create a publicity tool that you're going to use to advertise that family night. We're not actually going to host these family nights, but we really want to engage you in this process of planning such a fun event. This was another video that we were going to show in class. And continuing with some more ways to engage families during family learning events. So I just talked about family nights. We're kind of a social time where children came along with family members. A family learning event is really one where families come and learn. So we had these at the Early Childhood Center as well, where we offered a speaker who spoke on learning topics relevant to parents and guardians. Some of these topics included child guidance. How do you effectively, lovingly guide your child's behavior? Child development. Just how do children develop in the different areas of development? Routines. How can families have routines when they're at home that help children know how to predict what comes next in their life? When families have a consistent routine where each day looks pretty much like the day before, it's easier for children to function as they can predict what is going to happen next. Supporting learning and development. We had all kinds of themes kind of supporting learning and development. How can you help your children learn about math, about science, about reading, etc.? We also had one on stress and trauma. Families are and children are not immune from stress and trauma. So we had a social worker come and speak with families about this important topic. We would also have topics offered by parents. So often when we were planning our family learning events, we would send out a questionnaire listing a bunch of different topics, and families could kind of vote on what they wanted to see at the Early Childhood Center. So that was family learning events. When we had family learning events, we would also recognize that it would be difficult for for every family that wanted to come to find a babysitter. So we would provide childcare at the center in a different room when parents are in our back room participating in the family learning event. More ways to engage families. As you see, engaging families is really important. So I'm really just providing a whole bunch of ideas on how you can engage families in the life of your school or your child care center. Next are team building events. So a workday at the center of school. I recall doing this at a time before we were going to have an accreditation visit. An accreditation visit meant that somebody from outside of our center was going to come and assess the quality of care and education we provided. So we had a day where we spent sprucing things up and making the center look really good and really welcoming to our visitor. You could also do a service day in the community. If you know that uh, a cleanup is going to happen on a bike path or something like that, you can be there as a center and get to know your families as you're doing something to serve the community in which you live. We also had a parent guardian advisory committee meeting. This is a meeting that I, as the center director, had with parents. I usually had 3 or 4 or 5 parents join in, and we talked about the center. And this was a way for me to learn what parents wanted from us, as well as a way for families to really be able to provide input and help on different things. So we just reviewed a whole bunch of ways in which centers and schools can engage families in the life of the center or school. Now we're going to look at what families can do to support their students at home. Just a few of these items. First one is to create a positive study and learning environment at home. Asking the question, is there a good place for students to do schoolwork and to study? Sometimes this is the kitchen table. Sometimes you'll be lucky enough to have kind of a room in your house, which is your study room, but you really need to have a good space for students to do schoolwork and to study where they can focus. Are the parents, family members available to help a student with schoolwork and to support their studying and learning? So I know when my daughter was growing up, it was important that my wife and I were able to help her with any kind of areas where she was having a challenge, to help her learn a math concept or to review a paper she'd written or that kind of thing. So are parents available to help a student and support their learning? Another question to ask is, if parents or family members have a tough time supporting students' learning, do they connect their student with school resources, tutors, etc.? So some things that my kids would be learning would be above me, and it's important for me to know how to connect them with people at their school that can help them, or find a tutor that can help on a tough subject. Does the family schedule allocate time for schoolwork? Sometimes families get so busy, so doing so many things, that schoolwork is kind of tough to fit in. So it's important, as a family is creating that family routine, that they make sure that students have enough time at home to do schoolwork that they didn't get done in school. Another way to make your home a good learning environment is to be an example yourself of lifelong learning. So the question I asked for this one, do parents and family members continue to learn as adults? Do they have hobbies they learn about? Do they do professional development for their jobs? Do they attend trainings, workshops, conferences, that sort of thing? So when parents are continuously learning, it sets the stage for kids to know that learning is something that everybody does and that it's a lifelong thing that you do. Do parents read? Do they listen to podcasts, etc., to support their personal development and learning? So there's a lot of things out there these days that we can do to continue learning, and it's good to model those things for our students. Do parents value education and learning? Oftentimes, the value that parents place upon education is contagious and transferred to children. So if parents think education is very important and doing well in school and working hard and showing good effort, if parents value those things, then a lot of times kids catch those attitudes, those habits, and understand that school is important. Another thing I encourage families to do is to set clear expectations. Are students expected to attend school consistently? Learning happens in school, so kids need to be there. Do the parents have the clear expectation that their students go to school consistently? Are students expected to get the most out of school by working hard and trying their best? Not everyone is going to be a straight A student, but everybody can have a good attitude towards school. Everyone can work hard. Everyone can try to do their best. Are grades and teacher feedback valued and important? I just said straight A's are not something that everybody's going to achieve, but grades are kind of a way of measuring how a student is doing in school. They're kind of like a thermometer that kind of measures the temperature of how a student is doing in school. Teachers can also provide valuable feedback on ways that a student can make improvements, and so it's important that grades and teacher feedback are valued by families and are important to families. A little bit more on becoming engaged. Do parents and students talk about school regularly? Do you have conversations in the evening? Do you have conversations in the car? Do you have conversations at different times where you talk about school and what's going on in school? I love hearing from my children when they were students, and one still is a student, but just what she did in school and what kind of things were going on in her classroom. So having those conversations is important. Do parents attend school events such as any games that their kids go to, concerts, open houses, orientations, etc.? When a parent goes to these things, it shows the student that school is valued and important. Do parents attend parent-teacher conferences to learn how students are doing and learn how to support them at home? Just as we talked a little bit before, parent-teacher conferences are vital. It's really important that parents continue to attend parent-teacher conferences. Do parents work cooperatively with teachers and students? Or, I'm sorry, I'll start again. Do parents work cooperatively with teachers when students encounter challenges and need additional assistance? So sometimes you're going to get that call from a teacher that a child is struggling in an area. Do you work with that teacher to help the child get the assistance that they need? Now I have one more slide in closing. What do I do if or when my family background is different than the kind of ideal that we've discussed in these past slides? As we started off at the beginning, each of us have a family of origin that we grew up in. So as students, you're still growing up in that family of origin. I, as an adult, am no longer in my family of origin because I have my own family that I am leading and raising. Each family of origin has some positive aspects and some negative aspects. And it may be hard to think of the positive aspects, but if you try, you'll probably find some. The negative aspects may be easier to identify. And here's something I encourage everybody. When the negative aspects of your family of origin outweigh the positive aspects, we can work hard and intentionally to create a more positive experience for the children we raise. So back to Mr. Kimmel sharing about his growing up. I did not have a father there when I was growing up, and I really missed not having a father there. I saw a lot of my friends with fathers who were engaged, so the way that I'm able to support my family now is to really be there and to really be available, and to do all these things to support my children as they're learning in school. So our family of origin does not determine what we're going to do in the family we raise, but we need to work hard and be intentional to make sure that we contribute to the family we're raising in a good way. And then at the end, we will have time for some questions and discussion on this topic. I thank you for lasting through this long teaching and am hopeful that you learned some good stuff about family engagement. Thank you.